G'day, Doggies fans, all things Bulldogs. We're going to do an NRL Media Watch, so it's episode 12. This time we're going to focus on the Mahoney Mania, the media's hypocrisy, relation to discussions on Origin and head knocks and all that sort of stuff. So we're going to sort of unload a little bit on Dean Richie and Brent Reed and the way they've gone about discussing Reed Mahoney and the niggle. And we'll also talk about how well the Dogs have handled it as well. But just want to introduce big-time Bulldog supporter. You might have met this guy. If you've got some Bulldogs merch, he wants it. His name's Jimmy Rustler. How you going, Jimmy?
Good, mate. Yourself?
Oh, very good for a Sunday. Thought we'd do a little get-together and get stuck into the media because they like to get stuck into our players.
Never ends, mate. It never ends. Oh, mate, just work and footy, mate. It's that's pretty much it, mate. You know, family man, come home, earn the bread, mate, and just watch the footy. That's my life, brother.
That's it, mate. Well, I've done a lot of chores already this morning on my Sunday, so ready to talk about footy before I get back to the family. But before we get into it, how good are the Dogs? How good was that win on the weekend? And how good was Reed Mahoney? He's my man of the match.
Mate, it's just amazing. It's just amazing what Ciro and Tuma, I don't think Tuma gets enough praise, to be honest with you, to bring in someone who specialises in high performance like he does and to see the quick turnaround in our fitness, our line speed, and just the willingness to really go out there and give it our all, mate. It's just chalk and cheese to where we were last year. I don't think the coaching staff get enough praise, to be honest, when it comes to our fitness and what we're doing this year. Or having said that, I don't truly think that the latter represents how good we've been this year, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's every game's a nervous sort of week for us, especially with what's been happening at the moment. All things Jimmy.
All things.
Come through. There we go. G'day, Weiss. How you going, mate? Regards to the Dogs, like Souths were ripped off again. I've said it every week pretty much. It's just a broken record for us, but we head into this Parramatta game, we lose that, we can fall behind just the way that teams are struggling to put 2 wins together, 3 wins together. Teams going on a run has been hard. The Dolphins lost by a point last night, which pushed us out of the 8 because Raiders jumped above us. We're currently second. We're conceding 16 points a game compared to the Panthers who are conceding about 15. And we're scoring 22. They're scoring 23. That's the for and against situation. And we're number 2 in defence and number 9 in attack now. So it's just it's amazing. There were glimpses of this resilience at the start of last year with comeback wins versus the Titans, comeback wins versus the Cowboys, and what we did when we went to Melbourne in round 2 to show what we were sort of made of, what the potential was. But that season and that injury toll just and just that turnover of players that sort of weren't up for the challenge that was coming to the club. Those that didn't like it, those that weren't prepared and ready and were sort of what they call, negative people around the club who weren't prepared to fight for their spot. Those people are slowly being flushed out of the club, and it's starting to, you can see through all the grades, just the way they all talk. The fans sit there and carry on about Toby Sexton not being in the side, but whenever he talks about how important Drew Hutchison's been to him. They're so closely knit. They've formed 2 or 3 years of mateship within a preseason, and that's only proven in defence. What's your thoughts on that?
Mate, you hit the nail on the head. A side that's close knit and want to go out and play for each other, that's the result you get on the footy field. Lazy defence, things like that. That's when blokes are going out there and playing for themselves. They're not playing for the team. And on the topic of Hutchison, like, we can sit here and acknowledge he's not the best 7 in the world. By 100%. No means. By no means. He has his deficiencies, but I truly believe that he's added something to the side, and I feel that he's allowed Burton to be unlocked with the way he's been playing, and he's taken a lot of pressure off Burto. And I'm not a coach. I don't claim to be a coach, but I have eyes and I have opinions, and I believe that Sexton was being groomed for this role to come up into first grade. Once Burton was ready to, once Burton was on this trajectory that he's on now, where he's literally probably one of our best players right now, and the informed 6 in the comp, one of them, if you ask me, then the writing was on the wall for Drew to maybe take a step back and Sexton to come in and see what Sexton can do, and then see maybe if Burton carries on with his informed game. But I had a problem with a lot of people bagging Drew and each week calling for his head like a carousel, mate. Last year it was Burton's head we were calling for. Dud signing, things like that, which are absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, Burton is a
still a centre till round 5, wasn't he? This year as well.
You know,
where are those people gone?
They're gone, man. You know, and one thing people need to realise when it comes to coaching specifically, and I'm not talking from point of view that like I'm a coach or anything, but I'm saying that the coach is with these guys 7 days a week, knows them inside out, knows their problems off the field, knows their deficiencies on the field, sees it in training, sees a lot more than what we would see. And Ciro obviously made the call that Hutchison was going to start at 7 for the amount of time that he's been there for an absolute reason.
Yeah,
there's no other way of putting it.
We need to it's people get sick of hearing trust the process, but they need to hear it more than ever.
You have to,
mate. And thanks for bringing that up, Weiss. Would love to know your thoughts on Lipboy Hopboy, because I wanted to transition to that based on your point about when Ciro made the decision to bring Toby in. He said it wasn't planned, but I believe there's been a plan in place for a lot of stuff because, you know, Gould started hinting that Jack Todd was going to make his debut. And I've got a feeling he may have been making that debut against Newcastle away, and instead that debut went to Lipboy Hopboy. Maybe they're both going to come in. But I think there was a definite plan to bring a young gun who's earned their spot in for this week to see how they handle it. In like, what better stage to handle it when you've got 2 people representing the club in Origin. Viliami Kikau has been injured. You've got probably the smallest forward pack in the game. You've got Poasa Fuamasili, who's actually playing really good football and impressing a lot of people.
Playing big minutes now as well.
Much bigger minutes in Cup to get fit. Liam Knight's got an injury, so he needs to take over that mantle. And Lipboy, who in the first game against Parramatta this year, they threw him on an edge and he really didn't handle it. They dropped him back to Ron Massey Cup for a week. I think he ran 250 metres there or something, then come back to New South Wales Cup since round 3 and has been phenomenal. I think he made 270 metres when he come back in round 3. And he took 15 hit-ups. Without our Origin players, we had 2 players in the sin bin at different times, spine players. Lost our winger in pouring rain against a team that hadn't lost in the wet for 4 matches, who had won 8 of their last 10 at home, and 21,000 fans were there. And Ciro chose to bring him in then, and look at the job that he done. What a phenomenal job that kid did.
What a game you had, mate. What a game. I have good mail on this bloke. He's a big Jackie Todd enjoyer. He loves his Jackie Todd.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, mate, he's a knowledgeable bloke, this bloke. I'd say more knowledgeable than me, mate. Very, very smart bloke. Very astute Bulldogs fan.
Oh, I need to know who this is.
Mate, he's very astute. He'd be a very he'd do good on your show, mate. He's got
there you go. But maybe we can have a threesome.
Yeah, mate. Going back to Lipoi Hopoi, mate. Like, what a debut. What can you say? You know, no errors, safe as a house. Just went forward, good meters, good carries, and I think you know me. Like, I'm a big Curtis Moran enjoyer. I love little Kurt, mate. Small bloke, big ticker. That ticks the boxes for me when it comes to a player, mate. So, like, I always gravitate to the smaller blokes who aim up and play like they're 6 foot. You know what I mean? But I think Lipoi might be putting a bit of pressure now on Moran after that performance.
Yeah, and that's what you want, though, isn't it?
Exactly.
Brad, who was on last week, g'day, shout out to Brad. He loves saying iron sharpens iron, and it's been used quite a bit lately, that saying. But that's exactly the succinct way to say, to tell people what the Dogs need to do. And that's what I've been saying all year. Until you have the juniors in there playing at a level that they just cannot be denied, and having your first grade side set great examples in their effort and attitude on the field, your reserve graders aren't going to be effective unless they've got those first graders in front of them. If you know what I mean.
100%.
And forcing them to a new level. And we've seen it with Bailey Haywood. You know, I watched Bailey halfway through last year play. He was on the field for 30 minutes, was going all right at halfback. Team was going all right. And then, you know, he did it throughout a lazy arm, missed a tackle. And I sort of wrote him off defensively from that. The way he had worked. They talk about his history a bit with his, I think his grandfather and stuff, or his uncle was in jail or something. But he's, sorry if I got that wrong, I forget the story, but he's a very, very good little player who's come through. Jack Todd, as I was saying, was going to make a debut. Powasa, I think he's looked more impressive at camp to start from the development list to actually start first grade. Same thing with Curtis Moran. He was on the development list too, and has only just been rewarded with a contract for 2 years.
Yep.
In top 30. So the fact that they're all coming through is just testament to the whole coaching squad. Mick Potter, young Luke, and I forget the other fella from Manly. I always forget his name. And obviously you've got Jason Taylor in there, who some Bulldogs fans still haven't forgiven for having to whinge about some rule, which they reckon cost us in 2012 or something. But Bulldogs fans got long memories, man.
Mate, we don't forget. We don't forgive and we don't forget, mate. That's one thing about the Dogs fans, you know. But, you know, you hit the nail on the head, mate. An interesting story with Bailey, because my daughter, he actually used to attend her school through a program with the Bulldogs, going there and playing a bit of sport with them, rugby league, etc. And she used to talk to me, tell me about this young kid, Bailey. He always comes to the school. Bailey always comes to the school, you know. And just watching him now, getting a glimpse of him and seeing who he is and seeing him in cup and that, I can absolutely see why Ciro loves this kid and has pretty much cemented a spot on the bench, because he's an absolute tackle machine, mate. You look at this kid go. He's so small, but he's in every tackle when it comes to the props running and trying to bend our line. He's in front of him, mate.
I was saying this last week, and I elaborated on it more, because there's people who always, and the commentators do it too, they reference the amount of missed tackles the Bulldogs have had. But watch what's actually happening.
Context.
It's leg speed. They get a young fella like Bailey Haywood. He goes low and basically trips the player over.
Yep.
Goes around their legs with great technique. They're going so fast. Viliami kick out does the same thing on the edge. Salmon does it a lot. Drew Hutchison does it. Phenomenal job of it. Reed Mahoney does it as well. They all get off their off their line, put on so much pressure that they basically knocked the fella half over anyway. And, sometimes you'll get a situation where the person will use their feet and crab sideways or whatever, but most of the time, look, we're just swallowing these guys up. We're just swallowing these attacks up with the way they're doing that defence. So I don't care about if Drew Hutchison or Bailey Hay would have made, 10 missed tackles between them. I can tell you now that set, the opposition only made 30, 35 metres. So that's all you need to fucking focus on. You know what I mean? I think that our line's been breached about 6 times in 12, 13 games.
Well, what you just said there is correct, because me and my wife were watching the game, and my wife gets crazier than me, mate. She gets crazier than me, and she was pulling up. Well, she was looking at stats half time. She was looking at stats. She goes, "Man, actually, it was after the game, 35 missed tackles and whatnot." And I looked at her and I go, "Who cares? They didn't even score." So you look at the context of those missed tackles. Our defence was that good. We kept them tryless even with 35 missed tackles. What does that say? It alludes to your point that these guys are banging them up in the middle in defence, and even if they're falling off or they're grabbing a leg, it's stopping people dead in their tracks, and we're not conceding metres to these people.
Yeah.
And all that with 35 missed tackles.
So the teams that will struggle against, Parramatta is actually one of them. And the reason I say that is because their halfback's very savvy when he's rushed upon. So if you don't rush him, he kicks till 5 metres out on a dime. But if you rush him, he can be very good at avoiding, sort of like Darren Lockyer used to be.
Yeah.
Mitch Moses has got that good footwork. A lot of halves do have it in them, but he's actually exceptional at it. Light-footed enough to get away with it, and their offloading ability. Round 1, they were the best team we've played all season, and they still remain that.
Eels, they're very interesting. Like Moses. For mine, he's one of the best sevens. Mate, when we talk about sevens, the hierarchy of sevens, who are we talking about? We're probably talking about Cleary, DCE. Yeah. And you can mix and match Adam Reynolds and Mitchell Moses to pretty much, mate. When it comes for a kick to touch, who does it better than Mitchell Moses? The guy can get you 40 metres, mate, 50 metres. He can get you up the field quick, smart. And if he's under pressure, he steps in. He likes to step in and kick the ball, and his kicking's just pinpoint. If he wants it on a 10, it goes to the 10.
Yeah,
and that'll be dangerous for us. But I firmly believe that we can beat anyone, mate. I'm not just saying that. I firmly believe after our last 2 performances, I don't care what anyone has to say, the defensive resolve of this team and the grit, teams are going to have to play their ass off to beat us, mate, because we aren't beating ourselves.
Well, that's the whole thing at the moment. We are in every game of rugby league, and they have to beat us. And it's the same as the good sides. And I said this last week. You look at the top 5 teams in the competition, not where they are in the ladder, but you rate the top 5 teams in the competition. We're one of them at the moment. And we've had the toughest draw. No teams played more top 8 sides than us.
Turnaround bias.
20 of 24 matches, we've got a longer turnaround. A shorter turnaround than the opposition we play. The amount of games after buys, I think 5 games, the team that's on the bye plays us. I don't think there's another team that's got 2. They've got 3. I think there's a couple that have 2. Most teams only have to play someone after the bye once, maybe twice. For us, it's 5 times. I messaged Phil Gould and I said, I hope this is before we beat the Roosters, and I don't think he did it, but because he's one just not to make excuses for his team. But the theatre and Hollywood of it all, like maybe they do. I said, you need to tell our team that the NRL do not want us winning the comp.
Mate, nobody wants us winning the comp, mate. The journos don't want us winning the comp.
No.
It's... Look, I get across a lot of the shows because I've got a lot of time on my hands due to my profession, okay?
Yeah.
And I've got receipts, a lot of them. I know what's being said across the board because, like I said, I've got a lot of time on my hands. I should be getting paid to listen to this stuff at this point. And the amount of dribble that comes out of these guys' mouths when it comes to our club, it absolutely amazes me. There's no objectivity in it. There's no nothing. They can talk. They can say how much they want, mate. We're just giving our opinion. These are facts. No, they're not. There's no objectivity to anything these people are saying, mate. "Quote unquote" analysis, or mate, it's just biased opinion, and they'll never admit when they were wrong. They'll just skim past it and move on to the next talking point that they can about the club that doesn't put us in a good light, and it's amazing. It really is.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue, mate, because we've as an NRL Media Watch, we've talked about the Dogs for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's all right. We can do what we want. We're live. So let's get into it. The Saturday scrum, across the bottom, it's been a few things talked about from Dean Richie. So he's the guy who wants, we must ban the kickoff because of concussions. But at the same time, does an article where he says coaches and players need to initiate flare-ups because it's all gone. So they need to have the punch-ups again. And they need to be, and the refs need to let things go. And, and part of me sort of goes, yeah, well, I don't mind Origin from that part. I actually love Origin, but I've actually think that there needs to be a conference system and then a 5-week break in the middle of the season.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, where it doesn't disrupt our season. And, the conference system's based on locations. So those people close to their location. So it reduces travel because you're only playing someone. You go home and away each season with the teams in the other conferences. So it means you're not traveling home and away. It just reduces travel costs for the NRL. It also means you have those local rivalries twice a year, home and away, and you can have a full mid-season break while they play Origin. They could do some internationals and stuff as well. I think they talk about it every year, but they know it's not going to change. But they just bring up these stories every year. Like I said, I responded yesterday. Should we have a break for Origin? You say this every year. Like you know that the media company you work for doesn't want the games to stop. They want the TV, right? They want the TV money, whether the stars are playing or not.
Yeah.
They don't care whether the clubs are, not making a profit because only 5,000 people are turning up.
It's funny. It's funny you mention that point because me and Weiss in the chat, he's actually my brother-in-law, and we.
Oh, g'day, mate.
Yeah, we talk football, mate. We talk football all day, every day, mate. And I actually floated this. I said to him, mate, why don't Origin should just be played over 3 weeks, middle of the year. Every team should have the bye, mate. We just had 16. Man, how many teams have got the bye this week already? Give everybody the bye and just play Origin, get out of the way, and continue with the comp. But where I can see where that is an issue is the blokes that are playing Origin won't have the bye, which is detrimental to them because they won't have the break that they need, But what you're saying is right about maybe the conferences. I agree with that too. But from my point of view, what I'm actually thinking and trying to say is that I feel like Origin is actually a detriment to the comp in the current game because the game is harder, the game is faster, they're bigger, they're stronger. I just don't feel like it allows anymore it's a good time to set it in the middle of the season anymore, just because it's what it's doing to the comp. And all you got to do is listen to read the articles, listen to the podcast, listen to the shows. It's Origin centric for the next month, for the time period Origin's on, mate. They're not even talking about the club games that happened this week, mate. They give him a 1-minute gloss over, and it's just Origin talk. Like we're still playing a comp here.
Yeah, and they persist with the origin talk with the same old stuff when the fact of the matter is they're repeating the same rhetoric from last year and the year before. And this is why Dean Richie's come out and said, oh, everything's so vanilla. He wants all the rivalry to happen again. I'm like, do they think we're stupid though? Like, we know that when Queensland have an illness in camp that it's just all part of the rhetoric. We know when Paul Gallen was saying stuff to those Queenslanders back in the day, they'd be going and having a beer afterwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all just, it's like WWE bullshit. And
it's all work.
Australia doesn't care about that shit. We're not American.
100%, mate. And to put it in pro wrestling terms, it's all a quote unquote work, mate. And we're the marks.
Yeah.
You know?
100%.
And
so
this bloke,
Reed, eh?
Yeah, you go off. You lead us into this brilliant article that Bulldog Richie, no association with our beloved Bulldogs, by the way, wrote.
Yeah, well, he's tried to be funny, but the fact of the matter is he sits there on NRL 360 going off about concussions and that because he wants to be the one leading it so that he can get the pat on the back because these guys at News Corp, right, they actually look at how many views and impressions they get. The Channel 9 guys aren't as worried about that sort of stuff. The Channel 9 guys have a lot more insider information with clubs. So clubs sort of lean on them a lot more, whereas News Corp's all about the heroes, the villains, and the bloody either inspiring people or outraging people, and they don't care. But it's just the typical thing. I went at Paul Crawley because he was the one to say that the Dogs were torturing and hurting Kyle Flanagan by giving him a debut after 4 rounds against the best team in the comp, and he represented himself fantastically. He said what a disgrace Canterbury was. And then he was the one after 4 rounds last year when our right edge had actually outperformed our left edge, which was hungover from the World Cup. It outperformed them, I think 3 tries to 1 or something ratio. They looked so much better on our right edge, and Kyle was actually a big part of that. Burton was sort of a bit behind the 8 ball. And we just lost to the Warriors in New Zealand for their first home game from coming home. It was a packed stadium. We led him for 69 minutes and lost by 2 points. And he comes out and says, we need to drop Kyle Flanagan right immediately. He wrote this story, which was pages long, was released 5 minutes after the loss to the Warriors. 5 minutes, literally 5 past whatever the time was.
Mate, you had it written up on your laptop ready to go, and all you had to do was press send, mate. That was it.
Yeah, just had to hit send. I think they expected we were going to lose by a lot more even. It was as if we lost by 2 points. We were 2 wins and 2 losses. We smashed Melbourne. We're way better than the Tigers at Belmore and then in that 40-degree heat.
Yeah, I was there. Trust me, it was very hot.
Yeah, and basically most of the points are scored down one end. But the fact of the matter is, that was Paul Crawley, literally 12 months to the day, to the round 4 and round 4, saying we were hurting Kyle Flanagan and then saying we needed to drop Kyle Flanagan when he was actually playing all right. And then that was the narrative from that point. There was surveys, should we drop him and bring in Oluwapu and all this sort of stuff. That's the sort of the hypocrisy. And then you got Dean Richie, who's sitting on there, beating his chest. So he doesn't want flare-ups. He wants flare-ups in Origin. Where do you think most flare-ups happen? From kickoff.
Oh, mate.
That's when it's most likely to happen. From a kickoff.
Oh, sorry.
So I can punch someone in the head and concuss him that way. That's not a problem. That's not a bad look for the game, is it?
I saw this article and I went straight to Twitter and I added him and I asked him, I said, mate, aren't you the same bloke who was arguing with James Graham on NRL 360, not listening to a word that Graham was saying, and you're the one saying that concussion that kickoff should be banned because of concussion. And then another one of the panelists said it only makes up like 1% of the concussions across the board in the comp, the kick return. And then Paul Kent, when he was on, Kenty, he made the best point of it all. He said, no one's telling the props to run it back in the line, mate. They do it because they want to. So for him to come out, write this piece and say we need flare-ups in Origin and we need a bit of hate back into it, mate, there's already flare-ups, mate. Already flare-ups every week in the game with the amount of jumper grabbing and like laying on blokes in the tackle and the niggle. It's already in the game. So what are you implying? Are you implying that that's not enough? So what's the next step? Are we just going to start bashing blokes again? Is that the next step? Because that goes against his whole concussion argument that he's so adamant about. What does he want? I don't understand.
They're quite happy just to, and this is how the media works politically as well. You've got people who think that who used to be left-leaning, who are now right-leaning. You know, woke actually, you know, the definition of woke and unwoke has just been completely swapped from side to side. I'm
just reading this, right? A game for choir boys with no hate left among the players. Are we saying that the players need to go out and hate each other now? Like, what? This is a sport, isn't it? It's a sport. And we all know, like the astute rugby league fan, the purist, the rugby league enjoyer who watches every game every week, knows that 90% of these blokes are friends off the field. They got their WhatsApp chats. They're in contact with each other. They go to different sides. They're playing against each other. So what hate? Where's the hate where are you supposed to pull this hate from? This outdated version of Origin where it was back in the 80s and the punching on was just the normal thing and the hate was there because the hate was there naturally because, mate, you could just clothesline a bloke if you wanted to, no drama. But now you're talking to people that are literally friends across the network of rugby league and you want them to go out there and obliterate each other, mate, in a way that's not sanctioned on the field. What's he asking? What's he asking?
Yeah. That's 100% it. It's just the hypocrisy of it. They don't care as long as they create the division in the fans. They know how to roll people up. They know that there's still a whole bunch of people that want to see the biff. And look, I see some biff and I get excited. I can't help it.
Mate, we're men, mate.
You can't have it both ways.
100%. 100%. Either you say, look, you go back to the old rule of what happens on the field stays on the field, but then you've got... Since the concussion thing has crept into the game and we've got more data and more understanding of how concussion works, literally taking any hit to the brain can alter your brain. Like there is outcomes to copping hits to the head, and we've accepted it, and the players accept it, right? But I think the game has advanced too far, and we're in a time period now where just punching a bloke on the fields, it's unacceptable. You know, it's part. Look, I love biff, mate. I love it. I get fired up when I see the biff. We love the fights. Some people love their UFC. People love their boxing, things like that. But there's no place for it in rugby league, mate. This is a pure sport. It's a contact sport, but it's not a combative sport. And that's where we're saying that. And that's the point here. You can't just go out and punch each other in the head, mate. Yeah. You know, because then what?
Well, that leads us on to that's a good segue on to g'day Dan and Tim. Dan said the Dogs are the first side to keep a team trialist after 2 sin bins since 1999. That's saying something, boys.
It is. We're breaking records this year, boys. We're making new records. And
Tim says great win on Friday against the Knights. G'day, Tim. G'day, Dan. Thanks for joining, lads. Look, we'll go to Brent Reed, who's honestly would win biggest cock of the year this year. He's, you know, he sort of always took this role, this apology, you know, like he sounded like an apologist, like he was the victim in it all. A little bit like Buzz Rothfield, you know, softly spoken, you know. He's so nice, and that the last couple of years he's tried to ramp up the you know, he's trying to get out there and beat his chest a bit. And he was doing that again on the Saturday scrum yesterday. Do we want to listen to it or?
Yeah. Put it on. Give our listeners a bit of a listen to the dribble.
charged with grade 1 striking. It's a fine with an early guilty plea. He faces a ban if he fights it and loses at the judiciary, but I'd imagine they'll just plead guilty and he'll cop a $3,000 fine. So nothing too major out of that.
Everybody who is down on annoying players, like you read, Mahoney, can't they all kind of pool their resources and get them to go and fight it? So, we just get it all out in the open. Have you had anybody that you played with who really got under your skin, Wader?
Oh, not me personally. I played with Mickey Ennis, and he used to get under the skin of everyone. But, yeah, well, since the no punching rule, well, it was never a rule anyway, right? It was just
you're always not
allowed to do it. You just got the warning first, or 10 in the bin and no suspension. It has allowed a little bit of extra cheekiness to come into the game, and particularly with those big boys in the middle, those smaller guys just yapping at them constantly for the 80 minutes. And the Bulldogs were on top. They scored the try right there late. There was a little bit of extra around the ruck. So the old natural justice is gone from the game where the big boys could stamp their authority. But, yeah, Reed Mahoney's been effective at it the moment. He's got on the skin of, what's that, 3 now? Hetherington, Safidi.
He's chalking up quite the...
You can't spin that around, Ryan Girdley. You can't spin it around so that we're allowed to actually, punch somebody because that'll stop that. Do you think?
It is a little bit frustrating, Tone, to watch it. And I can understand why those guys get so frustrated. You could just see, it'd been a frustrating night for the Newcastle team, and things weren't going their way. And then you've got a little guy in there just pushing and shoving and chatting away. Yeah, I can understand the frustration there, but they do need to be disciplined these days, the guys. And as Wado said, the natural square up, or the things that we used to have to take into consideration if we're going to carry on like that, are that no longer relevant. So it is a little bit frustrating for people that have seen the game, what it was like before. And what it is like now. It's hard for them just to say, well, like my old man would say, someone sort this guy out, But it just can't happen anymore. And he obviously is aware of that, and he's getting under a lot of people's skin. But
yeah, but there's no doubt too, like Jacob Saifidi after that game would have been disappointed in that action. Because when, especially when your temper's up, emotions up, you're not playing well, that you're on the back of a result, and that you just have that rush of blood and that emotion. But when it cools down, you know deep down when you've sort of messed up, and I should have been better there. I should have kept my cool. He's an experienced player. It's a rush of blood, and it's cost him.
I'd like to see someone just go at Reed Mahoney from the opening minute and niggle him. Just be more proactive about it rather than waiting for Reed to niggle you. Just from the opening minute, get into him.
I thought Jackson Hastings might have been the man to fill that role.
Well, they had a bit of it.
They did
early, didn't they? And then they were getting flogged, right?
Yeah,
so when you're getting flogged,
that's the thing.
It's hard.
Yeah, and then Bulldogs have been dominating teams.
See, the Dogs, someone who's beating the Dogs, just make it their mission to get into Reed Mahoney all game. But
it's a skill set, Reedy. It's not something that guys that aren't used to doing it can just go out and do and then play their natural game. The gift for the guys that can do that is actually be so effective. I mean, he was the best player on the field last night, Reed Mahoney. He was exceptional. And then he can still do that.
Yeah.
So, it's a skill set that not a lot of people possess. And, he does it really well.
Did you, Ryan, have anybody who particularly got your goat?
Not like I played with Steve Carter, and it was the same as McInnes, like he drove everyone else on the opposition crazy. So I used to see it on a weekly basis. He used to drive us crazy as well. But so, I used to watch it quite regularly, guys. But certainly back then, though, guys who wanted to get at him could actually get at him. So, it was a different situation back then, but I did see it.
Maybe rather than practicing boxing training, Tone, clubs should practice sledging.
Okay.
I'll tell you what,
berating people, because you can't belt blokes anymore, but you can get under their skin.
But in the heat of preseason, when you've been training 6-7 weeks against each other, prepping for an NRL season, it does get heated at times. And like when you mix the teams up, even so, like me and Luke Lewis, we used to always get into it training, like never physically, but there was a lot of verbal and there was a lot of.
I think that tells us most of the story. What's your thoughts, buddy?
What? This is my biggest issue when it comes to all of this talk about Reed at the moment. We were lambasted last year for the amount of quote-unquote utilities we signed. And Reedy, he led the charge on this. He was talking the most crap. He was the one that was saying, "Oh, what are they going to do about all these utilities?" Like it was a joke, mate, every week, you know. And then a few other people a few of the quote unquote journalists also, right? So now when you see what's happening with the Dogs this year and you see how they're travelling and you actually objectively look at the side and say, how has this team turned it around from the worst defence to pretty much the second best defence with Penrith, okay? How did they turn that around? No, we're not looking at none of that. We're not looking at how good they're going this year, how they're the only team in the comp who hasn't had 30 put on them so far. They're the best at limiting the amount of run meters a team gets on us, right? None of that. We're not talking about none of that. We're talking about Reed Mahoney and his chirp. That's what we're going to talk about for weeks now, mate. Just because Reed has the guts to talk up to some of these big props who, let's be real, if we're going to talk about football, talk about the game itself and talk about what goes on the field, you watch every tackle, you watch every ruck, there's an elbow in someone's face, there's a headbutt, there's a head driving in someone's face. It ain't for the faint heart, mate. If you're that soft where Reed's getting under your skin, then go look at every ruck and see what's happening, mate. You're getting elbows to your face all the time. You know, palms, blokes lift themselves up and they got their head on, they got your head, using your head to prop themselves up with.
Mate, the knees into the ribs that like where they just lean on them with their knees and just sit on them and just push it in, you know. Players who just jump on the back to add weight to it. Yeah. Well, there's already an elbow just being just shoved into a pressure point.
100%
on the ground. You know, there's still grapple in most tackles as well. Like, it's not a game for pussies. It's not a game.
No, it isn't, mate. No, it isn't. So then you got this little bloke who last year, when the Knights put 60, what was it, 66, if I remember correctly, on us, you've got one of the biggest chirpers on that side. Who is that? Tyson Gamble. And I know he's a chirper.
And Jackson Hastings.
Yeah, and Hastings, yep. So I remember Tyson Gamble chirped at, what was it, Adam Dewey from the Tigers. Adam Dewey was injured on the floor. And I believe Gamble said some pretty crazy stuff to him. And Adam just got up and wanted to crack him one on the spot. Yeah. Like, he literally saw him. He just shot up there and wanted to hit, okay? No one talks about it. I remember it, okay? So now we got this last couple of weeks with Reed, going back to the Hetherington sin bin. This has been the stigma around Reed Mahoney now, where the little man can't talk up to the big man. Because why? What right does a little man have to talk up to a 6'2", 6'3" prop? What business does he have? Mate, if you ask me, these props are that fragile mentally in their head that they can't handle Reed talking up to them, then maybe they should get off the field, mate.
Well, how's that different to a prop leveling out a fullback on a kick
100%. 100%.
Like, he might not say nothing, but he's still much bigger than a smaller man. Should he not, you know, if the little man's going to stand up for himself and stand up for his mates, you know, and he's doing it for a reason. You know, I felt Wade Graham was pretty balanced about it all.
Yeah, I agree with Wade, what he said. He wasn't too far this way, too far that way. He was sort of keeping it down the line, right? But people have to go back and look at the context of that 66-0 loss we did have at Newcastle, and I can tell you there would have been a lot of chirp on that field, giving it to Reed, and you could see Reed's emotions come through last year with how that year went. And he does look like an emotional type of guy himself. Like, he's very competitive, and he doesn't accept this stuff. So
and he's not the best communicator with the public speaking. You can tell that's a bit of a struggle as well. Felt he's improved a lot. When people are like that, he might be he's a bit extroverted, but I think he thinks about a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? I agree with you. I think he's an emotional person. And you could see that captaincy wasn't easy for him last year. Like, his passing and stuff was off from the get-go, was 20 levels behind what it was when he was at Para. And that's something you wouldn't expect to be really team dependent. It was more of an individual. Yeah. There was lots of things in his game. He had some success with the 40-20 early, and then he just decided that any time we're under pressure, he would just try and do that at the wrong time.
Yep.
this year, there was a couple of moments this year I went, "Oh, Reed, why did you kick?" But I said that about 50 times last year. This year, his kicking game has been phenomenal. The way he's turned teams around, the way he did that on the weekend was phenomenal as well.
Yeah.
I've said that many times. This is what we should be talking about. And look, we were listening to the Andrew Johns thing. I actually heard it on Fox, on the after game on KO.
Could I just add one more point? I just want to add one more point to it, right?
Yep.
I just don't cop the fact that, like I said, with the way we've been traveling this year and how much things you could be talking about when it comes to the Bulldogs as a club, and how we're proving everybody wrong with their predictions, how we look stupid because of of the signings we made in the off season, and these two big wins that we've strung together, and the big games that we've already had, and by the small margins that we've lost to teams that should be thrashing us. This is what we choose to talk about. Reed Mahoney's niggle. Like, I just, it bemoans me.
Yeah. Oh, this is why we do NRL Media Watch, mate, because we've so many good stories out there to talk about. This is what they focus on. Like, in their pre-games, even the pre-games for Canterbury all year have been shocking. The one for the Newcastle game this week on KO was probably the best it's been because it had James Graham there and Michael Ennis. And the way
I love James Graham, mate. He's a true battler for the club, mate. He's a good man.
Yeah, and when we're doing well, Mick Ennis will be that as well. And it's funny because I was listening to it the way I was talking about Jacob Preston. And I said, "Oh, this is gonna be on reels. This discussion. It's like he's the rating poetry, the way he was talking about Preston and yeah, as if the people have put together clips of Preston and the old Bulldogs, and with Michael Ennis talking on it already. I can't wait to download the video and share it everywhere because it's but it was actually good to get that from Fox. Like, we've had lead ups for the weekend where like for the game when we played Souths on Easter weekend, there was no build up to the game.
Yeah.
It was just and bloody Matt Noble is in some good shows, good Aussie actor.
Yeah.
And on Friday, Latrell. That was it. It was Latrell Mitchell.
Fitter than ever, he's back.
Yeah, we could go through every single year of his things. Every time he talks about Latrell's never been fitter.
Never been fitter. And he's back for the Rabbits this year. Tune in live on KO.
What are the fans saying about the Rabbits? Their own fans. We're the most unfit team in the comp.
Well, I've got a
Latrell's flat and lazy.
Yeah, I've got a Rabbits mate at work, and he's Indigenous himself, and he's sort of, how do you put it? He's sort of on the hating Latrell Mitchell bandwagon at the moment. Like, you know what? I'll mention this as well. This is something that I sort of been thinking about in my own head. I think the media really has a big part to play in this Latrell Mitchell backlash at the moment. It's not all his fault. It's not all his fault. He's a man. He's a human being. He makes mistakes. Okay, we all do. But the media has been pumping Latrell up for so many years and praising him. And the minute the guy fell off the bandwagon, fell off a little bit, and he's had a few little things on and off the field or whatever, his form slump, they're the first ones into him. They're the first ones into him, giving him crap, and they're the first ones beating the drums for Latrell Mitchell's head. I cannot understand it. They're at fault for this.
And it's a really good point because there's true Bunnies fans out there that while the media was saying how great he was, were actually criticising his performances a lot, especially around defence. Mal Meninga brought out a stat that Latrell makes more try-saving tackles than any other fullback in the game. But he also is not there for probably more than any other fullback in the game. Whereas Blake Taaffe, you'll know he's going to get there. He's probably going to get brushed away 90% of the time, but he'll be there to cause a mistake. If Latrell's within the vicinity, he's hard to get past, very hard to get past. And And that's the other point about Latrell is that 1 minute the media is sitting there praising that he's putting his family first and football second. 1 minute they're saying how great he is signing autographs to the kids. This was Buzz Rothfield going on about it. The next minute Buzz is talking about how, he shouldn't be going out to see a rock star that he likes the day before the game or something. He's probably had booked with his family and his nieces and nephews and that for months and months and months that he knew he was going to do and told the club he was doing it. Because these big artists, you got to get the tickets a year before. You don't get them last minute.
Who's Buzz Rothfield to tell Latrell Mitchell what he should be and should not be doing? Who is he?
Exactly. It's the same as I'm talking about Benji going away for 3 days with his family. Like, who gives a fuck?
Mate, I don't, mate, because at the end of the day, and who spoke about this when I was listening to one of the shows, I had absolutely no issue with it, and he should go and spend time with his family, because at the end of the day, mate, he's a human being, he's a man, he's got a family, and coaching is a 24/7, 7 days a week job. And this thing was probably organised months in advance for the bye. It just so happens that they're not in the best spot at the moment, the Tigers, and apparently optically it looks bad. But if you're on the bye, you got to, mate, why can't you go away for 5 days, clear your head? Mate, it did a world good for Bradman Best, didn't he? He went and got a tattoo and he came back and started killing it.
100%. I think even Gus said something about Bradman Best doing that. The next minute they played, the Dogs beat us by 60 and then went on a 10-game winning streak.
No, but at the end of the day, this is a job for these people, right? Like, being a footballer, it's a full-time job. You're an athlete. Your main mission and the party job is to stay in shape and perform and win. That's the business you're in, right?
Yeah.
But I think people underestimate the toll that this can take on people, and especially the younger players, mate. And then when
their families.
Yes. And when
Especially
and when we say get this guy in, get this guy in, get this guy in, I think we sort of forget what comes with being a full-time NRL player and the demand it puts on you as a person, So if people need to go away and clear their heads on a bye, mate, I don't have a problem with it, mate. Sometimes not training in that, mate, people have got little niggling injuries, mate. A week of rest will do them good. Like, why are we forgetting these are human beings also?
100%.
They're not robots.
I used to see that there's a guy always talking about the players being down at Jobal's having coffee. They shouldn't be there. And he's a Wayne Bennett lover and stuff. And, he loves the club and he's been... Anyway, I'm not going to name him, but he's not a bad bloke. Like, I've had some big run-ins with him, but I'm like, who are you to tell him not to go to Jobal's? That's the local business, which the Dogs go there and help them a lot. You know what I mean? And it's just part of their routine in what they do. It's part of the community. But another thing as well, there's people out there earning between $50,000 and $100,000 a year who'll work, on the freeways for 2.5, 3 hours a day, who are on salary, so they go to work and they might be in a management role at all different levels. And they would know that they're probably getting paid for 40 hours, but they're spending 70 hours a week doing their job and getting to their job. All about that.
Yeah.
These people know how hard it is to maintain their own family relationships when they're absent for that long. When they've still got to come home and contribute to the running of the house, when they've got to come home and make sure they spend time with their partners and their kids. Sometimes they don't do it successfully. We've all been guilty of it. Coaches are probably doing more hours than that. And I know they get paid well, but that doesn't change the fact that they're human. Doesn't change the fact that their wives and their kids need them for different times. You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah, Wayne Bennett's famous saying, and I heard this said a few times, and he said it to Benji, was make sure you pick your kids up from school. And that's been widely talked about. he would have given Benji a lot of advice, and Benji would have got advice from Tim Sheens. He would have got advice from a heap of people. He's just, I think the fact is that Benji sort of is very straightforward. So if he's asked, "Oh, what are you doing?" "I'm going on holiday for 3 days." He doesn't care.
He's his own man, mate. His own man.
He's a very own man. And for that club, when he was a 19-year-old and a 20-year-old star coming through, he, from that young age, was still the most present. You talked about Bailey Hayward being at the schools and that. Well, that was Benji.
Yep.
And he did that and did not stop for his whole career. When he went to the Broncos, he was everywhere in Brisbane. When he went to when he went to the Dragons, the same thing. He always took care of the community.
Yeah.
And gave back. And this is how they try and treat this guy, you know what I mean?
Like even going back to the comment where you mentioned Joe Bells and all the players shouldn't be going there and things like that. Our club, as we know, is a very community-driven club. You know, Adam Druisi's said things along those lines. Gus says things along those lines. Community is a big thing of what the Bulldogs do and what the Bulldogs are about, you know. And the fact that Belmore is just 3 minutes walk from that cafe, and Belmore's pretty busy, you know. If you're going to Belmore any time in the week, there's a good chance you're going to see one of the players roaming the street there near the train station, right? And since it's such a community-driven club, the community feels like they're connected more to the club because the players are out and about in the street there and they're a fixture, you know?
No, I don't know a club where the fans have so much access to the players. And when the players don't make themselves available, the fans fucking blow up.
100%.
Everywhere.
Like I went to Belmore last year.
Our players are probably more available than any other club.
100%. Like I went to Belmore last year to buy a jersey. I'm walking down the street, got my head in my phone, I look up and Kickoff's across the road. I didn't go and say hello or anything to him because I sort of like to give the players their space, you know, and because a lot of people do probably go up to them. I feel like it's more for the kids, mate. You know what I mean? For the kids to go up to their favourite player and get a hug and an autograph and that. And we just admire them from afar, mate, because we love the club and that, you know. But I feel like they need their personal space and privacy also, you know.
You go to the Lease Club and they all walk through it.
You know, like they're everywhere.
Like, there's no security guards. You can literally shove a knife into one of them. You know what I mean?
You know, they're everywhere. And I feel like that's what people love about this club because they feel connected to the club because of the sense of the community, you know?
Yeah.
And
I don't say I condone anything like that. I'm just saying they're so accessible.
They're out there, mate, you know? They're out there. You've just got to go. You just got to go have a coffee at Joe Bell's and a bunch of them will walk in at some point in the day. You can say hello, Gus, mate. I've seen pictures of random people with Gus nearly every mate. Gus will stop and take a photo with you anytime if you see him, you know. And we're talking about one of the greatest minds of the game right now, someone who probably should be running the NRL, in my opinion, out there and about, and we'll talk to you.
Probably eventually happen, but the thing with Canterbury, like Terry Land, you watch if you see him somewhere. Just sit there for 10 minutes and watch. He literally looks, people are coming past him and he knows they're Bulldogs fans. He literally looks at them to get eye contact and engages and puts the hand out.
He loves it, mate. What a legend.
The absolute legend of our club. And when you shake his hand, he doesn't shake it hard. He's probably got a bit of arthritis or whatever. Been on the drinks, maybe got some gout or something. But he fucking always looks to talk and engage with people and have a conversation. Yeah. He may not remember you like till for the next time, who knows? But I had a good conversation with Terry when I went to Belmore. I saw John down there, the chairman. And look, the chairman of the club, how much does he's now the vice chairman. They tried to make this big blow up about that.
Yeah, to the point where his own son had to get on Facebook and put a massive post out detailing that this is not the truth. This is actually the truth. Don't listen to the propaganda because is there any more proof that you need that there's a disconcerted effort to downplay the Bulldogs to the point where you're only reporting a half truth here to 100%. Speculate? to speculate on many things, you know.
John was the most accessible chairman. You message him, he might not message back straight away, but it'll be midnight and he'll be sitting there sending a message back to you. And if you've asked certain questions, I know people have messaged him with complaints and demands and who they need to sign and stuff, and he actually engages and gives them the time of day. Like, what a man. And they sit there and bitch and complain about him, and they might watch this, some of them, and, you know, and I've had times where there's been some things that have happened in the past where I've gone, and I've had my opinions. But as far as a chairman of a club which has so many supporters, is a brand in Australia. He's actually a brand worldwide, if you really want to know. And he's so popular, and he actually makes himself accessible and available to people. And then his mate Adam has taken over, and because he was going to step down anyway, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you only had to see those two in the change rooms against Newcastle.
Yep. It's
standing there talking, happy as Larry, you know, happy as Larry that the Bulldogs won. That's all they care about.
100%.
It's an unpaid role.
You know, on the topic of Adam, you're talking about a person who is in charge of $1 billion company, a data analytics company, a very successful man, all right? And he was gracious enough to go on the Kennel podcast.
Yeah.
Go on the podcast with the Kennel boys and sit there for an hour and just give his time like that. We're talking about a man who's worth $1 billion here with that company.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it before.
Yeah, well, I was really glad that he gave his time to those guys. You know, like the Kennel podcast, they're trying really hard to become, you know, a really big podcast, have different aspirations than what I do. And they want to be professional and they want to get all the players on there. And I hope they're successful in that case. I even, you know, and the fact that he did that, knowing that podcast sometimes it's not as, and Gus went on the other one, the Touchline podcast.
Yeah.
Those guys, knowing that
awesome.
when the Bulldogs lose, those guys lose their absolute minds.
Yeah.
Whether it's blaming the player, a player, blaming the coach, blaming, you know, the ref. The Kennel podcast, they've had the Kennel has been a really given a great service. I think Abdul might be behind the whole website and everything as well.
I listened to.
I'm not 100% sure,
yeah.
but there's been a lot of interaction. There's been a lot of schmitt that's been and smut that's been posted on those pages as well. And sometimes he can get really overly critical and jump the gun a lot. But the fact that these guys have gone on those podcasts that aren't huge, they've only got not even 1,000 subscribers, given his time, answered all the questions that get given. You know, every question that was asked was answered and answered properly. You know, that's a testament to the chairman of our club.
100%. 100%.
Sorry that was long-winded because I just wanted to make the point that these podcasts aren't always rosy about the Bulldogs. Look, and the fact that they've gone onto those podcasts and giving their time and giving us content to listen to and to get greater understanding, I think all involved have done a fantastic job, and it's just really good, really, really good.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Like I'm a Kennel listener every week. You know, shout out to Abdul and Dibbo. Love you both, mate. You know,
I actually love Dibbo a lot more, and he's a Dragons fan. But I feel he gets the Bulldogs better. I just feel he gets it. I feel that he might have played a bit more lead.
I think he should he should be a Doggies supporter, to be honest with you. I reckon he's a closet Doggies man. But you know, listening to them, mate, they got good chemistry, you know, and it's always an enjoyable listen for me, you know. Going on to the critical thing, like I think us as diehard fans, we do have a tendency to get a bit critical. But there's one thing I always try and bite my tongue if I feel like it's coming out of my mouth. I'll never insult the coach. I'll never insult the players. I'll only talk on someone's performance and what I feel they did wrong, but I'll never ever personally attack a player, a coach, or anyone in that capacity, just for the simple fact, mate, that a lot of people that do like to attack people like that have never played an 80-minute game of football, mate, and they don't know how, mate. Not many people can go out there and do what they do, mate. It's not easy.
Not in any lifetime. Not in any. Mate, we could get ourselves to the peak condition and still be
absolute shit.
Near able to compete in a rugby league match. You know, I was a bit of a cat when it came to rugby league earlier in my career. Not career, but earlier in my life, you know. It just wasn't made. I just wasn't made for league. I wasn't cut out for it. Not to say that
I still remember the first time I got folded, mate. Still remember it till this day. We'll never forget it because it hurt, mate.
And the bloke that winded me, he was like, I thought this guy was going to make it in the NRL, you know.
That's why I try not to be too overcritical when it comes to the club, mate. Like, look, I'll have my opinion. Sometimes straight after a game, it might be fueled by a bit of emotion. But at the end of the day, mate, I'm not a player. I'm not a coach. I just have opinions. And I try to keep it at a level where it's just more of a constructive opinion than, this is... Because at the end of the day, mate, I'm not out there. I'm not playing. And these guys are out there. They're playing. They're there for a reason. And I don't feel like I have the right to sort of go too hard on anybody like that. Like I said, man, we do get emotional at times. But we're not getting bent out of shape over the player. We're getting bent out of shape over the loss.
Exactly. And that's the thing. We've just had 2 great wins. We go out and lose to Parramatta, and the people who have said nothing the last 2 weeks, they're going to all pipe up. They're going to, Serrato can't coach. You know, I sort of dread selection sometimes and like we just played on a Sunday and we've got a short turnaround and they name the team on Tuesday knowing that there's going to be changes to that squad. And people just start losing their shit. Why isn't Curran starting? Why isn't Mann starting? He started last week and we won. Oh, you know, just lose their absolute brains over.
Do people understand the
an hour before the start of the game?
Yeah. Well, do people understand the nuance of just because you're playing one 17-player squad this week, coming up against another side will require maybe a different player on the bench, a different starting player, just for nuanced things for what that player can bring against a specific thing that the other side is bringing.
100%.
So you can't just expect, just because we won last week, doesn't mean the same 17 trot out. It doesn't work like that, mate. Someone that was on the bench last week might have something to offer against something nuanced that the other team can do, and the coach might recognise that can be shut down starting with this player. So you can't just...
There's also other scenarios too where they have a player in reserve grade who's working on specific things in their game which they may not be nailing, and it may be costing the cup side points. It might be costing them opportunities. It might be, costing them games in these lower grades. But they have individuals and teams working on structures that they know they can then have those players or group of players be then called into the first grade side and translate those skills and that knowledge and that stuff that they've been working on into the first grade side. And they've been preparing for it for weeks, and then they get introduced and they just go out there with the muscle memory and do it and do it successfully in the big grade. Some like Lit Boy Hot Boy. He's been doing these things in New South Wales Cup and come out there. It's not just a simple case of everyone just running out there with their separate sides. Potter's coaching them one way, Serrato's coaching them another way. You know, Josh Jackson's coaching them another way, and then they just all see who the best players are, and they all, and they're all trying desperately to win each comp. Winning Fleet, winning Harold Matts, winning SG Ball, winning New South Wales Cup is great if we can, but all that matters is winning NRL.
100%.
And I think our club lost its way with that a little bit in the past.
Yeah.
Now they've got that going, and talking to a couple of people involved with a lot of our juniors, one of the things that they say is that the local juniors are in a much better spot because they were getting too comfortable that they were going to be the next man up. And now that Gus has gone out there and they've got all these scouts and spies getting people from Queensland and schoolboys from every few months you're seeing this, there'll be an article, Canterbury have just signed this 16 or 15-year-old from North Queensland or from Brisbane or from wherever else, or from New Zealand, and they're, going to come into our system. And all our young guys in the local area and all the local high schools are sort of getting nervous. It's making them feel like they've got to go to another level, and step up and be better. And it's sort of, as we say, the iron sharpening the iron. They're bringing people in at a young age to make our juniors better. And I think it's working. It's been in place now for a few years. John Curry and other people before Gus got there got the Greater Northern Tigers and the North Coast Bulldogs happening as a pathway as well. So, the club started moving the right direction. Bring Gus Gould in, takes another pathway, brings another few more pathways in. It's starting to look good, mate. It's starting to look real good.
The proof's in the pudding. The proof's in the pudding, although we have lost a few on the trot in Cup, I believe. But the proof is definitely in the pudding. We have so many players right now in Cup that I dare say the Bulldogs have identified as potential first graders. And just like we said on the screen here, your Hot Boy, your Todd, your Hayes, your Sewer, we've got so many players there that I know most likely have been identified. Yeah. And you sort of think to yourself, the team that we're going to have in 4 years as opposed to the team we've got now is going to look much, much different.
People are going to, and that's the thing with losses. If we don't make the 8, or even making the 8 won't be enough. If we make the 8, making the 8 won't be enough the following year for our fans. Even making the 8 or being one of those teams, every loss is still treated the same way almost. One of the things that's happening, though, if we look at our top 30 for 2025, we've already got 26 spots filled. And what you'll notice is that juniors have been elevated to the top 30. Canterbury juniors, Bailey Hayward, Moran.
Yep.
Hayward joins the top 30 next year, but it'll be off contract. Moran joins the top 30 next year. There's others as well. Mitchell Woods joins the top 30 next year.
Mitchell Woods.
And he's only going to be 18.
So I have thoughts about Mitchell Woods, and because we have seen, you look at Lockie Galvin, for instance. How old's Lockie Galvin? He's about 18, 19. And look, my favorite NBA team was the Timberwolves, and I remember Kevin Garnett. He was my favorite player growing up, and he was drafted straight out of high school at 18 years old, straight to the NBA, and absolutely crushed it.
100%. Yeah.
I'm of the firm belief with an 18-year-old that if you've identified the kid as someone that is that good, that we had to fend off AFL to keep this guy, I feel that he should be around the top 30 all day, every day, training with top squad, training with our best 17, because if he's been identified as the future, he should be fast. I feel like maybe he should be fast-tracked because he's got the skill, he's got the talent, they've obviously identified it. An 18-year-old can come into this game as we know it today and can go blind and play blind and go real well. We've seen it with Katoa. We're seeing it with Galvin. I feel like the 18-year-olds today are different from 18-year-olds going back. There's a lot more support around them. They're a lot more skillful. And once they get into the water and they start swimming, mate, who knows how far they can go, But I know the dogs are worried that, and I can see why they're a bit worried that they don't want to throw him in too fast and break him, because if he's genuinely that talent, then they're a bit reluctant to elevate him straight away and get him in there. They want to sort of take their time with him and make sure he's polished before he gets in there,
And he didn't go into flag this year. He's actually gone to finish his schooling and stuff.
Yeah.
So they could have easily brought him into the flag to try, but they've got a bunch of talent in that halves academy.
Oh yeah, and I agree. You know, I agree with Gus where he's saying like Gus wants him to finish his education first, because I believe he's in his last year of education right now, isn't he? 18 years old. He'd be finishing his HSC, I believe, or, you know. And I really like what Gus is doing there. Football right now is there, but he wants him to finish his education first, and I feel like that should be his priority at the moment as well. You know, finishing his education.
G'day, Dave. How you going, mate? Dave wants to. He'd love to see our Woods and Connie performing flag next year.
Isn't he another good player?
Yeah, well, Conti's under Braith and Astor, and they know, you know, that halves academy is just stacked, and that's another thing. We're gonna, as Dogs fans, hopefully the NRL. See, that's why it's so good if the NRL team starts performing. It's a double-edged sword. You have a situation where the fan base falls in love with everyone in the 17, or the main 20 players that are being picked. But then you have the juniors doing really, really well, and you just have this bottleneck of we don't have enough spots to keep everyone.
We're going to lose some. It's inevitable. It always happens. You know, there's one player who I would be really, really cut if we lost, and that's Skelton. I have this bit of an opinion, and me and my brother-in-law were speaking about this as well. I feel like you need one of them big outs. You need one of them big backs with the leg speed, the toughness, the tackle busting ability, the line bending ability to take those yardage carries for you. You know. And that's what we're doing a lot at the moment. A lot of our backs are taking those yardage carries, getting us up to the 40. Then we get a bit of a roll on with the forwards. And then obviously on the fifth play, we kick upfield. But I feel like Skelton could be a real asset when it comes to getting that ball out of yardage just because of his sheer size and speed. Could be a good line bender, you know. And that's one player I don't want to see leave, but I understand if it happens. But I really like him as a player, Skelton. I feel like he's got he's got a real bright future in front of him.
Yeah, this is one of these hard conversations. You've got Blake Wilson who'll be there for next year. You've got the Fox who's there for next year. Blake Skelton's off contract. Sorry, not Blake Skelton. Gerald Skelton.
Gerald Skelton, yeah.
This year.
Gus said, I believe on Twitter, that he'd get his time, if I remember correctly. So
he should be playing this Origin series. So if Crichton gets picked now that the Fox is injured, it's going to be Wilson's coming in, and you just suspect that the next player is Gerald Skelton.
The Skezza.
So they'll have Wilson on one wing, Skelton on the other. Corraz will move back to the centres.
Yep.
He was another one who was phenomenal on the weekend, and especially when he went to fullback, he played so well.
I looked at my wife. I looked at my wife and I said,
"Oh, here we go.
That could be a future fullback." Correct, mate. The way he was taking balls, how safe he was. I don't know if you remember, there was one kick that was grubbing along the ground and he just slided onto that thing, face first, and just cleaned that up. He was damaged. Like, we've got so much options now.
Just before the Fox went for a run.
Yep. We've got so many options now, and I love Corraz. As I know, he's your mate. I don't know who. I can't name another player who works that hard getting us out of yardage than that bloke. He's an absolute battering ram, mate, and I've got all the respect in the world for that kid. He's gold. He's solid gold, that kid. Solid gold.
It's funny because he slightly adjusted his return style as well after the Canberra game.
Yep.
Because I think they did their homework on him to target him, and they jolted it free twice. Never looked like dropping it since.
No, he's one of our safest players. That was very uncharacteristic. Those two knock-ons. You can tell Ricky gave Ethan Strange a bit of coaching there on how to take on Corraz front on, you know. But
did you see him smash Amarillo last night?
Yeah, mate. Talking about that kid just for a second. Canberra's got one with him. They really got one with him. Another young bloke who just slotted into the side, and look at him, mate. He looks like he's been there for a couple of years. Amazing player, mate. Amazing player.
They've actually got a really young spine that's getting some games up. But see what they do have is that forward pack to give them the space.
Give them the platform. Yeah.
Mate, they could be. They're a team I'm really worried about. Everyone lost their minds when we lost to the Raiders, and you look at it and go,
Yep.
They only created one really good set. Everyone talked about Hudson Young, how great he was, but it was more the way the team created that try for Hudson Young.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I still think
even KO Weeks, Manly thought he was going to be the next big thing.
I actually had high opinion of him at Manly. He's a good player, mate. He's a very good player, that kid.
Very good player. I didn't know he could kick so well. He's kicking it deep like Moses.
The thing about the Raiders, when we do talk about the Raiders, is that's a side that Ricky's DNA is all over that side. You can't take Ricky out of the Raiders. Without Ricky, the Raiders fall apart, mate. I firmly believe it, because that side, time and time again, will show you that it doesn't matter what the scoreboard is. They will do whatever it takes. Doesn't matter how many sin bins it costs them. They'll do whatever it takes, and how dirty they have to get to win that game. They don't care, mate. They'll do it.
Yeah. That's no one's talking about the grubbery tactics of Rapana or the Whitehead and everyone else.
But I don't bemoan him for that, because I understand.
They just want to win.
That he's doing everything to win. He's probably one of the nicest blokes off the field. Remember, on the field, he's playing that villain role. Everybody loves to hate him, and I don't bemoan him for it, because he's playing his guts out 110% at full throttle, trying to get his side to win. He'll do whatever it takes. He's
not Reed Mahoney, though, is he?
No, his name isn't Reed Mahoney, and he doesn't play for the Bulldogs, so he doesn't get any airtime, mate.
See, I think Jacob Saifidi for that, and I actually have a lot of time for Saifidi brothers, except sometimes they tend to get injured, but at their best, that's a really good combination when they're not dropping the ball and they're offloading and denting the line and skittling blokes. Really good guys, tackle hard. But what Jacob did, he should get 6 weeks. You headbutted someone.
The intent was there.
It doesn't matter why. You put a little headbutt down. It could have made everything worse. It didn't hurt Reed at all. Just let Reed know that he won. But just because it's, okay, let's blame Reed. The Jack Heverington, what did he get? Because he went him in the tunnel, he got a few weeks for that. He should have got 6 weeks for that. So if Beatty should have got, if you headbutt someone deliberately, get it out of the game.
I see with these two instances. I'll touch on the Saifidi one first, because that's the most fresh one. That's the freshest one. With that headbutt, there was clear intent. He knew he went up there. He went and just headbutted him. Yep. It wasn't an accident. He went up to him with the intent to headbutt him. Doesn't matter how hard. Doesn't matter how soft. A headbutt's a headbutt. And this is where the duality of my own mind comes into play. Like I said before, mate, I love the Biff. We all love the Biff, but the modern game doesn't cater for the Biff anymore. So we've got to separate these two things. Do I believe a fine was sufficient? No, I don't really, because at the end of the day, you went up to the bloke and you actually headbutted him because you couldn't handle the chirp. Like how weak do you have to be to? And I understand we were flogging them, and Reed was probably in the ear, but it was no different to last year when they flogged us.
100%.
Doesn't give you that. I mean, are we saying that?
What about Mulatalo?
Oh God!
Like, I hate him. I want to kill him.
Rubbing people's heads and.
Then you sort of see now it's like he's not as you saw that you listen to him talk after the game and that, and you watch him with his mates, and then I watched him actually in a huddle with his whole side full of the biggest pack I've ever seen as the one who was talking to him. And then I sort of go, you know what? I might change my opinion of this guy a little bit, the way he's playing. But, he went after Avarillo in 2 matches. He went after Wilson. he's trying to beat his opponent. And on the wing, you've got that's a perfect place to do it.
100%.
A hooker's got access to everyone. But it's like they talk about the two fullbacks coming together. You rarely see it.
Yeah.
They talk about, the duel between the fullbacks. It should be the duel between the hookers, or the duel between the hookers and anyone else, pretty much. The wingers get a lot of time on each other, and the centres do, but not in the other positions.
Yeah. Well, even with the Saifidi thing, there was one thing I left out I wanted to touch on. Okay, so if Saifidi was so upset that he wanted to headbutt him, save the headbutt, mate. When Reed's carrying that ball next, fold him.
Yeah.
Fold him. What's stopping you? Fold
100%.
him.
100%.
You know, there is a way, an avenue, and this is the funny thing when Gerds and Wado had a bit more of a balanced opinion, which I appreciate. But then when Gerds said, "Oh yeah, it's a tough one, you know, they're losing and this and that," mate, you're on the football field and you are legally allowed to hit this bloke as hard as you can when he's running with that ball.
You're allowed to assault him legally.
Mate, go out there and do it to him, mate, if he's got you revved up so hard. The fact that they couldn't do it is what got the Knights, is basically what the Knights couldn't handle, and they couldn't handle it, and Reed was just being Reed, mate. End of the day. They couldn't do nothing to us. They couldn't stop us. They were, mate, within the first half an hour, at half time, I looked at my wife and I said, they've got nothing for us.
No.
And that's what frustrated him even more. And on the home turf as well.
They had nothing.
So at the end of the day,
their fans were just absolutely irreparable.
You know, and the Hetherington one, God, you're waiting at, and I found it so funny, mate. And I really feel like Reed downplayed this because he didn't want Heather to get in any sort of real hot water over it. I really believe that, because there is no way in hell that you can sell it to me that Heather was waiting up the end of that tunnel for Reed just to have a joke and a laugh with him. When you come out of your sheds to meet that bloke and put your hand on him like that, you're looking to crack him one. I firmly believe that.
I don't think he was going to crack him, but I did think he wanted to scare him, and he wanted to.
He did. There was intent there.
Make him believe he was going to crack him, but to me, it's the same issue, because if Mahoney did believe he was going to crack him, and then someone else is standing there and sees Jack doing that, and what if Mahoney swings back and hits him in the face, right? After Jack's done that. And then other players come in, and all of a sudden you've got people belting the crap out of each other when the game's finished.
That one was the more of the interesting one because it happened off the field. It was in the tunnel. And it's not an Adam Blair, Stewart instance, because that happened on the sideline. It was still on the field, you know. But this one, he made an effort to come back out of the dressing room to confront Reed. And I found it strange that he even put his hands on him. Seriously, like, okay, mate, if you want to come back and give Reed a full gobful and spray him and stand over him, that's fine. But I don't know how you can touch him. You know what I mean? Exactly. You're not on the field at that point, mate. You're off the field, you know? So if you see Reed, you know, how's it any different from meeting Reed in the car park at that point? Is there any difference?
It's just an intimidation tactic, and they can, you know, and sometimes I've tried to intimidate someone and it's gone wrong. It happened any time. Doesn't because they're fullbacks.
Yeah.
I remember trying to intimidate a kid walking home from school because he was mouthing off to me. Stood over him and he got the jump on me and I couldn't catch him then. And still haven't got over it.
Yep.
Give me a black eye. Anyway. Do we think, Joseph, we're going to take a transition?
Oh, yeah,
now.
Take some of the questions, yeah.
We've got it off our chest. The media.
Yeah, mate.
Do we think Joseph O'Neill will get a contract ongoing with the Bulldogs next year? Dave, my answer is an absolute thorough yes. I think Joey O'Neill will get a 2 to 3 year deal. If he doesn't, that'll be Joey's fault. I'm getting like that now. If we don't sign a player, it's their fault. If it's their choice or their fault.
We're definitely after a very specific type of player now, and the utility tag that we wore last year, it hasn't been mentioned again this year, has it? Because everybody who's come into this side this year has done a job, and they're the player. They're the type of player that Ciro wanted. And don't get it mixed up with me saying that Ciro chose the side he wanted. No, he didn't. He chose the players who were available that he could get, that fitted the mold of the football he wanted to play. If Ciro got his side, we'd have Tino and Payne Haas running the ball up the middle for us, mate. But we don't have that. But with the players that we do have, the players have bought in, and they're playing the sort of football that, guess what? Penrith are playing the same type of football, because it's no coincidence that we're first and second in the comp now leading the defence. We're playing very similar to each other. So it does sort of confirm that Ciraldo was very, very hands-on when it comes to Penrith's defensive system also.
Yeah. Well, the best 25 minutes of any match I've seen this year
was us in Penrith.
Canterbury Penrith, the first 25
What a
minutes.
game. What a game. The whistle was in the pocket, and that ball was in play for that amount of time that it was just going up and down that field like a ping pong ball, mate.
Even the Knights game on the weekend, until the sin bin, I think they probably come in after about 10, 12 minutes, but the ref put his whistle away at the start, and it was sort of going all right, you know what I mean? Like, it was looking like it was going to be a good game of footy. Yeah. And I was listening to the Knights coach, Adam, and he made some points that there were periods in the game where he felt his team defended well, and there actually was, and they were winning the yardage both ways for about 15 minutes.
The first half was worrying.
And look, even our tries, you could say there was luck involved, and poor Drew went for it after the second hit up, tries to, the Fox throws the ball to the Drew running onto it.
I saw what he was trying to do.
I was like, oh, is that a sign for next week? Is Drew going to move into the centres? And because I'm sort of very interested in how the team's going to line up for the Eels. But I might talk about that in the next podcast in a couple of days on Tuesday.
Got to save something for that show.
Yeah, we've talked a lot, mate. It's gone for 90 minutes. I think we better get it cranking. Dave said he's sorry if he's getting off the subject.
No,
not at all, Dave. We're looking for a segue out. Got to go and spend time with our families before we get back in the grind of work.
One thing that I would like to say to anyone who's still listening is just hang tough with the club, hang tough with the coach. Good things are coming. A loss here, and mate, if we lose, we lose. But we are not getting blown away this year. It would have happened already. We are in it for the long haul. This is a bona fide top 8 side. Whether we scrape into the 8 or fly into the 8 is going to be up to the boys. But at the end of the day, this club is chalk and cheese compared to what it was last year, and everybody should be proud of the club, because at the end of the day, if we sat here in the pre-season and someone told us that this is where we would be by round 13, we would have said that's an A+ season. Please make sure that happens.
Yeah.
So we've seen success this year, and what that's done to the fans is it's only made us want more. Whereas we've got to pedal it back a little bit and realise that where we're at right now would have been an A+ season for all of us. So we've just got to hang tough, pedal it back a bit, and let the club do its thing, let the players do their thing, and just enjoy what the boys are doing.
Mate, I 100% agree, and I made comment on that a couple of weeks ago. I said we sort of got to, after that Raiders game, careful what you wish for, guys. Like, it's chalk and cheese. If someone said this was what our season was going to look like after that game, even, we would be like, "Yep, give it to me."
We'd be loving it.
And it's not so much in the results and the end score lines. It's more so in how we have played and for the amount of time in games where we've been the side that's like, this team should win this match.
Mate,
you know what I mean? It's not 5 minutes of a game, it's a majority of a game.
Yep. It really is a testament, like I said at the start, to Ciraldo, the coaching staff, and Travis Tuma especially, because this team is a level of fit that I haven't seen in a long time. This is Penrith level fitness. These guys are absolutely out there and they are working there, mate. Josh Curran. Tell me, Josh Curran, you've got a back rower playing prop, playing better than most props in the comp, making more meters in shorter minutes, more post-contact meters. Like, how's he doing it?
Yeah, his efforts per minute. See, this is where I think the stats need to change too. Like, if someone can get out there and actually drill down in the stats a little bit more to say, this person does this much per minute, rather than, oh, this is the person's stats over a season. Because people were rubbishing his stats, I remember, and I was like, but based on the output for what the time that he's on the field, it's really, really strong. But yeah, 100% agree with you. Dave said, see you next Tuesday. You didn't start with us.
Like I said, mate, like 40 minutes, the amount of work this bloke is getting through in 40 minutes is it's astounding. It's monstrous. You know, and like I said, back rower playing in the middle.
Well, it's funny because he started back row against the Raiders, and I thought that was his worst 15, 20 minutes of his season.
What a legend.
But
what a legend.
Once they put him back in the middle, we were a different side. You know, was getting monstered by the Dragons running the ball off the kickoff, but just, you know, kept poking through.
Kept going through, mate. Kept going through. I feel like you want Kingy and Hughes to take those big carries off the back fence, and I feel like once we get a bit further up the field and we need a bit of fresh legs on there, you get Curran in there just to get that real quick leg speed through the middle, you know.
Yeah,
and help with the carries up the middle.
Well, talking about that, Jimmy, Dave just said I'm still here, laugh out loud, Tom Amone. We'll talk about Tom Amone and how he's going to help with exactly what Jimmy was talking about just then on the next instalment.
Yeah.
We'll see you next Tuesday, Dave. And thanks heaps, Jimmy.
No, all good, mate. It was a good time. I always love talking footy with someone who's objective, and you can have a good conversation without it turning into a bit of a biased, quote unquote, shit fest. You know what I mean?
Oh, mate, it's so hard to find people who can just, you know, get along and have a chat and get their opinions out. There's so many people who secretly hope for failure just so that they can be right. Their egos are that out of way.
I would love to be proven wrong all the time, mate, because I don't feel like I'm ever right. Like I just feel like it's always better to be proven wrong than proven right, mate, because you always assume the worst and you want to be proven wrong, you know. But to assume to want to be proven right in the regards of failure towards our club, then these are the type of supporters we don't need, man. You need. I'm not saying you can't be critical. Of course you can. You can be critical, but make it constructive criticism instead of just getting on Facebook and typing "fuck Drew Hutchison." You know what I mean? You know?
Oh, mate, they're horrible. But, you know, Robinson, Drew, he said Drew was probably one of the main players that helped turn around their whole season. And he
won 2 games for him off his back. He was responsible for 2 of their wins last year. Before we go, there was one thing I wanted to bring up in regards to that game that we played against tonight as well. Did you notice when we got binned twice, that as the player walking off the field, rev the boys up, they were clapping like they were ready to go to war when that bloke got binned. It was like they grew a third leg, and they all just went. They reached that next level. Each time when Tracy got binned, and when Sexton got binned, they walk off the field, they're clapping and they're yelling at each other and they're shouting at each other, and it's like the next level came into play, and these guys just went hard.
And that's probably there's 2 points in that. When we've had an extra player on the field, we've gone hard at teams and put points on. Usually we're horrible in that regard. I think we had one game where we weren't too good. But that's on the other side of it. When we've lost players, we've actually gone to another level. And sometimes, often the refs will help the side that's down. Sometimes it's you know, a double-edged sword when you got an extra player because the ref puts the whistle away on the other team and lets them get away with shit. There was none of that in this game. This was the Dogs actually played better in both of those periods. So you're 100% right.
Remarkable.
But anyway, mate, I'm glad we had a good chat.
Yep.
You've been fantastic. Speaking to you, speaking to Brad, it's been good. Been
Good,
getting
mate.
lonely. And
I'll
have you
get
on
the Weiss
sure,
on.
mate.
I'll get the Weiss on, mate. We'll get a 3-way going, and you'll get to meet the man himself, mate.
We'll get the Weiss on, eh? Does he like the mango vanilla Weiss?
The Weiss bars.
The Weiss. Is that where he got it from?
Nah, you can tell me where his name comes from.
All right then, Jimmy. Enjoy the trains, mate.
Mate, all good, brother.
All right. You'll have to listen to yourself on the podcast.
Oh, mate. I'm not good. I don't listen to myself.
It's something we all hate, but do it anyway. Just play it. It's good for
mate.
Good for the algorithm. All right,
Good
buddies. Thanks, mate.
Mate.
You can stay there. I'll end the stream.